Hello, welcome to my channel, or welcome back. I have a very special reading for today. This is for someone who finds themselves in love, yet is still alone. And it's a very confusing energy to be in. It might even get you called delusional. This unrequited love feeling, or maybe this feeling like you know this person is your true love and that on some level they do love you back. Yet for some reason you find yourself alone. So confusing, right? Okay, so we have the Hierophant. So there's this sense of this being almost like an initiation ritual. Like there's this magical process that happens inside of you when you fall in love for the first time, like truly falling in love. And I feel like I'm talking to someone who's dated before and maybe thought that that was love. And then they found this connection that was just so different. And this really initiated them into a new way of being, a new way of seeing the world, a new way of existing as themselves. And it might have felt confusing when this true love almost fell through in a way, but really this is the important part, is that this was an initiation on an almost spiritual level. If you have been truly in love, you would understand the spiritual feeling that's associated with it. All right, we have the Page of Cups. So I do feel like there was some message delivered to you through this process, and like of a very emotional nature, but it was almost like it was something that was meant to teach you something. And like the expression that comes through on this card, because there's the fish in the cup, is you give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. Teach a man to fish, he'll eat for his life. So there's a sense of, you could have been given this love just served up to you on a silver platter, and you would have ate for a day. But it's like this initiation that I mentioned is teaching you how to fish. It's teaching you how to be in love with yourself for the rest of your life in every moment, and really showing you that there's a process that's taking place within you. It's not something that's instantaneous, right? And it's like nothing comes to you easy also, is what I'm getting. Like there's the sense of, it could be a really sweet, loving connection, but you do have to work for it on some levels. And that's where maybe some of this frustration could be coming from, is not understanding why you have to work for it, or maybe misplacing your work. Like if you had fell in love with someone, you might have thought that the work that needed to be done was in convincing this person to love you, of really making yourself the perfect suitor, really showing up for them in all those ways. But I think you're starting to understand that actually the work that needs to be done is something on yourself and relating to your emotions on this really deep level. And it is, again, very confusing. So let's pull some more cards, get a little more guidance. So the Ace of Pentacles. So I'm getting the sense that it was like this message was delivered to you, but it was just a glimpse. It was just a very brief glimpse of this Garden of Eden, of this heavenly way of being. The Lana Del Rey song Video Games is coming through, where she says, "Heaven is a place on earth with you." And also, they say that the world was built for two. So it's this feeling of a Garden of Eden on earth, where it's almost like you could get absorbed just in your love with this other person. And I feel like that's the glimpse that you saw when you first fell in love, was this just a completely new way of being in the world, where it's not like you're striving and struggling alone. Maybe it was this feeling before that life was kind of on single player mode, and then you realized, oh, it could actually be a two-player game. You could actually build heaven on earth with another person. But like I mentioned, I think this was just a glimpse, and I think this was also part of this initiation ritual, so to speak, is that you were teased with this glimpse of what true love could be, and then it was taken away from you because there was more work that needed to be done. And I think you're starting to understand how to do this work, even if it feels like really painful at the beginning and really confusing, like I mentioned. There's a sense of wanting to work towards this person when really the work needs to be directed inward. All right, and the Four of Cups, it's like you're being delivered a message, and it's like something is not being seen. Like you're not wanting to accept the message. You're not wanting to change anything in your life. You want to just stay as you are. There's almost this feeling of stubbornness where it's like, okay, if I met this person and fell in love as the person that I was, how come I couldn't have this perfect vision of love? But actually how it is that when you first fell in love for the first time, it brought out this higher self version of you. But again, it was just a glimpse where it was only for a brief moment. But you weren't really being that higher self throughout the rest of your day-to-day life. It was almost like maybe just around this person, you would become elevated. And this is where you saw the glimpse of how life could be. But then you needed to put in the actual work to stay in this elevated state, even when you're on your own or just going about the rest of your life. So that's sort of what the message that's being delivered to you is, or the thing you're not wanting to see, is that there is some development that needs to take place within you for true love to be possible. But of course, you wouldn't have done this work if there wasn't a carrot at the end of the stick. So it's almost like true love is this motivating factor for you to be a better person or really reach your full potential. And in some ways, it's almost like this carrot at the end of the stick will stay dangling forever. So maybe there's this almost feeling of this being kind of something forbidden or something out of reach for you, and especially if you're not making any real change in your life. But of course, you could see a lot of musicians, like even Lana Del Rey, who I mentioned previously. She has this wonderful career writing all these songs about love. And I saw in an interview once, she said that almost all her songs were written about the same man. And if you're a Lana Del Rey fan, you know that this was not the man she ended up marrying. But at the same time, she does seem quite fulfilled in her life. I mean, she attained really great things through this unfortunate feeling of heartbreak and grief that she carried with her, but it really pushed her to be a wonderful artist. So this could be something you could be seeing for yourself, as a sense of, even if I don't end up with this person who I'm in love with, this love could motivate me to do something that is really great in this world. And there is also the sense of being able to find that heaven on earth in the future. But it's like this pining is almost something essential to you. So perhaps the message you're not wanting to receive is that this is genuinely a true love that needs to be devoted to. Even if this person is not in your life, like I mentioned, like you're still alone. But maybe you have some of this feeling of like, okay, well, I could just find someone else. Like, obviously, this love was not just with this one person. I could just date someone else. But this is missing the point. It's that this vision of love will not be accessible to you with any person until you've done this work on yourself. So it's really about, it's not even about the other person. Like, if you're fixated on them and thinking about how you could win them back, like, you're kind of playing a losing game here. Really, what needs to be done is to just do the work, and love will find you in the end, right? That song is also coming through, the Daniel Johnson song. True love will find you in the end. Alright, so the Knight of Pentacles. So there's this feeling of observation and of stillness as well in this card. This is a very still, silent card. This feeling of just waiting or just doing the work, and love will come to you. It is this feeling that you can't go out and chase things exactly. It's this feeling of silent contemplation about your true self, about your true nature, and this is what will lead you to true love. But it is really difficult. Again, like, there's this feeling of clinging to something, like clinging to the ego, and that is what's holding you back from true love. That when you let go of the ego, this allows you to open up and channel through new messages, and like messages from this higher self, right? Many artists have spoken about how they're not really coming up with their artistic endeavors just from the level of mind. Like, Puccini said that the opera Madame Butterfly was dictated to him by God. He simply wrote it down. So that is really the process that's taking place within you. And like I mentioned, it's almost this ritual. And you could say that it is required that the ego is humiliated over and over again in order for the true self to actually come to the forefront. So you could almost look at, if this love situation was a little bit humiliating for you, that this was actually a good thing, because it was something that killed your ego, essentially, and allowed you to channel through these messages from this higher source. And again, it's like this feeling of heartbreak is associated only with the ego. And so if you're really struggling with these feelings of heartbreak, it's because you were too identified with your ego. And so then again, this is a problem that you are creating for yourself when it comes to a roadblock to, first of all, experiencing true love, but also to being your highest self, right? Because if you really connect to that highest self, that unity consciousness, you might say, there is no separation between people. There is no you who loves another person, who, you want to attain them, you want to have them, right? When you're really tapped into the sense of just being one with everything, right? Like Buddha sitting under the tree and reaching enlightenment, there is no longer that feeling of wanting someone else. And again, it's just on the ego level of just what you want. Again, desire is the root of all suffering, right? We can go for hours on this. And there is this sense that there is something you just need to let go, right? It's this process, again, like I mentioned, of grieving, of letting something go. And it is really hard to let your ego fall away. It's something that you've identified with for your whole life. But I think through this process, you're starting to understand that clinging to the ego doesn't benefit you. Alright, so we have the Nine of Swords. So I feel like this is this feeling of heartbreak. And again, when you're clinging to ego, it's almost like it could come in waves at this state in your journey, right? Where sometimes you have good days where you really do feel tapped into that feeling of, there is no one else in this world for me to love per se. Like we're all kind of one, and that true love is more of an energy that will find me, right? If you've ever heard the song Wicked Game, there's a line at the end that says, this world is only going to break your heart. And then the song closes by saying, nobody loves no one. And it's this feeling of, yeah, like there's no separation between people. But once you start getting into that separation of, I am my ego and this person is their ego, then that's when you might have these sleepless nights about like pining for them, wishing that they would text you, having dreams about them. It's this constant battle, and it could even be one of the hardest battles that you've ever fought, right? Because usually these ego games are easy to let go of, and maybe if you had some heartbreaks in the past that were more on the mild level, it was almost like this, again, like this smaller trial of, I'll let this person go, it's fine. Or maybe some sort of conflict that you had in your life, understanding that, oh, it's just ego, I can let go of it, there's no reason to fight, we're all one, it's all love, right? But then this true love experience was a challenge of a much higher caliber, because on a conscious level, you could maybe be telling yourself all those things that might have worked before, but then there is just this pining in your heart that is so strong, just like a magnetic pull that's drawing you towards this person. And it could be that they have occupied your thoughts basically nonstop for maybe even months at a time, and that is like a very difficult thing to go through. And maybe if you're even further in your journey, this could have been years at a time. I mean, let's not manifest that future for ourselves, but it could be true. And there's this feeling that it's almost like, it's always there. It's always in the back of your head, this feeling of like, I wish that there was someone else who would love me. And this just, this is what causes these sleepless nights, this constant battle. But every time that you choose to say, there is no one else in this world to love me, it's really just me and my own personal journey, that is how you overcome that feeling. And it is really just an uphill battle every day of fighting these waves that come back to you, of maybe memories that you used to have, of like sleepless nights, and really just thinking about what things could have been with this person, when really this is the distraction. You have to get back on the path and remember that you're walking your own journey, right? That is the most important part in this whole thing. And maybe your own journey does include a feeling of true love. It could include this person coming back into your life. But as long as you're focused on them, that is attention you're taking away from this true process of self-development that is required for you to ever experience true love in any way. Right, the Ace of Swords. So this speaks to a sort of inner soul guide that you have with you at all times. And maybe this inner soul guide is represented by the person who you are truly in love with. And you could see this as a constant sort of projection that you might have experienced at other points in your life. Like if you think of the people who you've had sort of romantic obsessions with, or you've really put them on a pedestal, and it feels like, that living in your head rent-free, where there's always that person at the back of your mind, and it kind of switches up, throughout your days. There's different people you might fantasize about. But then I feel like this true love experience kind of locked in on like, oh, this is the one. It's like all those traits in those people who you'd fixated on before are now manifested into one person. And that's why this person feels like the perfect one for you, your other half, your soulmate, and just the perfect complement to you. It's because the inner image of this figure has always been with you. And so that's where it may feel like you need this person in your life in order to walk this journey, because they're just so perfect and they occupy your mind. But really the thing you can do is actually see this as a representation of an inner soul guide who is always with you. And the soul guide guides you through this dark period of the underworld. So it's really about this working with this inner image of who your romantic obsession is. And again, detaching from ego, of understanding that the actual person, like the ego being of that person, is less important to you than your relationship with their image. And that's why sometimes people might call this delusional, having the unrequited love, having a crush. But once you move from that period of having a crush on an individual person and worrying about what they're doing, what they're thinking about you, and you move on to working with the energy of that inner image of the person and the messages that are being conveyed to you through the traits that they embody, and then that's when you can actually make real progress on your journey, because it's showing you so many different steps or parts of yourself or ambitions that you need to realize. So it really is about connecting to this inner guide and letting it lead you with a sort of light and this comfort. Like maybe you felt really comforted when you were around this person, and you can kind of tap into that comfort at any time now, knowing that that inner image was with you all along and it will continue to be with you even if this person is not in your life. All right, so we have the Four of Wands. So this is really about building a strong foundation, which then leads to celebration. And there's almost this feeling of marriage in the card too, like the figures are holding bouquets, there's some sort of celebration feast going on, and it really is about this heaven, this promised land is available to you, but you need the strong foundation first, right? If there's still aspects of yourself that are unhealed, that are still identifying with the ego, where you're still replicating patterns from your upbringing, from various conditioning, then this is not a strong foundation for this type of true love relationship. In this true love relationship, you've let go of all these things from the past and all of these strange biases or behaviors that you might have picked up on, all these generational traumas. Those will manifest in your relationship, and that will not be a strong foundation. They will always lead to some sort of conflict in any relationship. And of course, you can work through these on the level of mind, but it's so much better and just it flows so much easier if you release all these things before you actually build a relationship with anyone, because then that's where the strong foundation occurs, where you're really just building this connection between two people without all these things that you need to heal manifesting. And so it could involve a process of doing some sort of shadow work or working with your inner child, but really the key here is just letting go of the ego, understanding that none of that is really so relevant to you. Like a lot of that does influence your unconscious behavior or even your conscious thoughts as well, but that at the end of the day, ego identification is only going to break your heart, right? In that song I mentioned where he says this world is only going to break your heart, he's not just talking about like life, like it's not some nihilistic like life is just awful and pessimistic and love isn't real. It's just about identification with the ego will always break your heart. You'll always have this feeling of, I am this being who wants to be loved, and there's someone in the world who I want to love me, but they don't want me back. And that is always a heartbreaking feeling. Like also the Amy Winehouse song, Love is a Losing Game, is coming through. But she says, love is a losing game, one I wish I never played. But I feel like if you have experienced this feeling of true love, it can sometimes go back and forth where you feel like, you know, I wish I never met this person, but then sometimes you might be feeling like, you know what, I actually am thankful I played this game, because look at all this crazy growth that comes out of it, like really things you never thought you'd be capable of when it comes to just how you see yourself, how you see other people, and the fulfillment of your life's purpose. Alright, so the Five of Swords. So there's this feeling of laying down your swords and letting other people have their ego games, right? That when you come to this relationship, you don't want to be clinging to any of those feelings of resentment. Like, especially if you are someone who's fallen in love and maybe have then been rejected later, or someone walked it back and they were like, oh, actually, I'm not in love with you. It almost feels like there could be feelings of resentment or anger towards this person. And again, this is holding back your development on the path, right? Your development on the path requires you to lay down the sword of ego and say, you know what, people act because they're simply puppets. Again, like when you are identified with ego, you are just a puppet for all these things that you've been told, all these traumas that you've experienced as a child or as an adult as well. And it's really about finding this way to come together without bringing any of that to the table. Like there is no reason for you to cling to those feelings of someone hurt me, someone wronged me, someone betrayed me. All of that is ego identification. When you're truly in the state of feeling one with everything, you know that there is no personal harm meant to you. There is no vendetta against you. No one is trying to hurt you. It's just this feeling of existence, of things playing out because the story was written long before you were ever born. This is a story that is played out in billions and billions of bodies over the years, right? This overarching story of love, of unrequited love, of complexes that people hold. If you go back through mythology, like, you know, consider the Oedipus complex and all that, it shows you so much about these things that we all experience. All right, we have the Sun. So this is really about being born again, returning to this childlike state where you were untarnished by any of the things on the level of mind, before you had ever learned to think this is good, this is bad, before you thought this is how I should act, this is who I should be, these are the goals that I should have in the world, these are the things that I need to attain. Before before all of that, when you were simply experiencing consciousness itself, like just experiencing your sense perceptions, just experiencing your awareness of your environment, just awareness in general, of just feeling that you are partly a living being, but then partly that you are this consciousness that is outside your body in a sense, but is kind of watching the show as it plays out. It's almost like watching a movie, right? The baby doesn't identify with its role in the play and go, well, I need to do all these things, I need to have all of this. It's simply watching the show play out, right? And that's how you need to be when you're in this detached state where you're not identified with the ego any longer. You're simply seeing things play out, and you understand that the things that happen to you are symbolic. They are part of your journey, and they are trials that test your ego or humiliate your ego, but they do not define really you at your core. So if you're identified with any of these things that are happening in the world around you, you need to understand that they are symbols for your inner development. And this is where the heartbreak, again, it becomes really hard, because you, on one level, on the level of ego, you're really feeling, I really want this person in my life, I want them back so bad. But when you look at it from the symbolic sense of relating to your inner development, you understand that you were being shown some things, that this was a message to show you something on a much deeper level than could ever exist just on a level of flesh. Like if you just think about, your lifespan of like, okay, I'm going to die when I'm 80 years old or whatever, right? This is not a story or a lesson that takes place in the scope of 80 years. It's a lesson that has taken place for thousands of years, over all of time, right? And it exists in the ancients as well. Like if you go back to the Symposium, right, Aristophanes tells the story of how humans were split in two by the gods, and this was because when they were joined as one, all they would do is like lay on the floor and procreate like cockroaches, right? So the gods split them in two so that they could be productive and wander the earth and search for their other half, but actually do something in that path of looking for a level of development, of developing our conscious minds, but also of developing our connection to this one being of just unity consciousness. So it's really this feeling of like, if you actually were with that person all the time, it would be like this state before humans were separated in two. You would just not do anything else. You would just be with them all the time. And that could be lovely, but you could actually go crazy from that, or your mind would just stop working. Like there's no real possible way for that to be executed in this level of reality, right? You could think of it as after you die, your souls will become one again and then you'll be together forever, right? That's a better way to look at it than this feeling of you want them in this conscious reality with you all the time. As long as you're clinging to that, that's where you've kind of lost the plot a little bit. You've kind of gone off the path, because you understand that the path is this process of coming together in certain moments, but more or less being driven to do something. And like this love could be the motivating factor for you, and it's not always the same for everyone. Not everyone is motivated by love. Sometimes people might have some other experience that is kind of their driving force, but for many people it is love that is the key to what drives them to productivity or to create something in the world or connect to their higher self. Like if you heard the Addison Rae song Fame is a Gun, she talks about how she knew it was the only way to heal her broken heart. And that is this feeling of, this heartbreak that you felt, that you can't fix it by just finding someone else to date, or just writing in your journal about how much you miss this person, or complaining to your friends about how much this person wronged you. Like none of that is going to help you. The only way for you to heal your broken heart is to connect to this higher self that is connecting you to your life's purpose, your reason for being on this earth. And it's really about having gratitude for this process. And again, forgetting about this other person entirely. Like again, they're just a symbol for this sort of true love, that this union that has existed within you. And it already existed within you since you were a baby, but it's something that you need to realize constantly as an adult as well, right? You need to get back to that state and stop pining for someone, because that is just not productive. The Hanged Man. So there could be this feeling of suspense where you're almost suspended between two worlds, where the material world of what you thought you could have, of all these things about, just find someone nice to marry, just live a kind of peaceful life together, that's all you need. And then you were catapulted into this way of being that was a lot more spiritual, where you understood, okay, it's actually not about finding a person in the world, it's about finding an inner union within yourself, which is then connecting you again, like I mentioned, to this higher self, this elevated state of consciousness. But now I feel like you're suspended between those two worlds, where it's almost like you feel like you're going back and forth, where it's like on one level you understand that yes, this ego identification is pointless and you don't need to attain or hold this other person. And that's where you're in the more elevated state of mind. But then there's also the state where you still want them. You still want them on some level, where you're thinking, okay, well, I'm going to do all this healing work. I'm going to stop identifying with my ego so that I can get them back. And that's where you're completely suspended. You are just hanging in stasis. You're not moving between either world. And it is important to walk a middle path between the material and the spiritual world, but in this state that you are in right now, it's obviously not very fun for you, and you can't really do anything. You're restricted. And when I say productivity, I don't just mean it in the capitalist sense of putting out as much as you can, but it's more about how much of your higher self you're letting flow through you. Are you closing off the channel so just a few drops are coming through? Or are you cracking it wide open so that this can pour out of you in every moment? And to crack that open in the fullest sense means to just cut yourself down from the tree. It's to stop identifying with the worldly world entirely and get yourself out of this impossible situation that you find yourself in, right? That's what the Hanged Man represents. It's like, it's almost this impossible situation of suspense before something happens. And I feel like that's really where you're at right now. You understand that something has to change, something has to shift, but that it will be wonderful for you when it happens. But the thing that's holding you back right now is, again, it's just your own conscious mind, your own thoughts of how can I get this person back? How can I convince them to be with me? And all of that is holding you back from this true higher self who does not want another person. They do not care for any romantic endeavors in the real world. The higher self simply exists, right? And that's where you need to be in order to find some sense of peace or solution to this mystery, to this problem, is to just exist, to not strive, to not identify with any of these feelings. This higher self doesn't feel sad or heartbroken or angry or bitter. It just is. And that's the state that you need to get to in order to progress on your path. Right, the Page of Swords. So I feel like this experience has brought up some new thoughts in you, and especially relating to spirituality or what you should be doing with your life, maybe some new thoughts about your life's purpose, and it almost felt like things opened up for you in a whole new way, where I think, like I mentioned, you had previously been identified a lot with the material world of these worldly desires that were implanted in you by society or by your parents, and you had kind of been working on that path. But then this has cracked open a whole new horizon for you, where you understand that you could really do anything in the world. You have this connection to a higher self that is able to guide you in ways that you had never been able to be guided when you were just trying to operate on the level of mind. And again, relating to this feeling of a soul guide that is helping you, show you these new expansive possibilities for you. And it's really just about allowing these messages to come to you, right? Anytime that you're caught up, restricted in the ego of pining for someone, of thinking about them, you're cutting yourself off from these messages that could flow through you in this more authentic way. Alright, let's draw one more card to close out this reading. Okay, the Ace of Wands. So I feel like there is this sense of power and a new power that's developing within you. Like I mentioned, the Ace of Pentacles kind of came when you first fell in love and you had this vision of love that was possible for you. But now the Ace of Wands is coming to you as a message of your own power in the state where you're kind of starting to move on from it a little bit. And not move on in that you're saying, oh, well, I was never in love with them anyway, or anything like that. It's about accepting, yes, on the ego level, I was truly in love with them as much as any person could be in love. But I understand that that doesn't actually matter, because this was only a symbolic representation of the union that exists within yourself, and that is connecting you to your higher self and these powers you have that you never thought you would have had before. These powers that people don't talk about too much, or that you might have thought were just being made up, this silly children's game of this magical powers. But you're starting to understand, like, no, magic is real and you're fully capable of it. But it's almost this feeling of disbelief, like I mentioned with the Hanged Man, is you're still wanting to stick back in that old world where you didn't have any sort of higher powers. You were just a little ant. You were just fulfilling your destiny based on these generational patterns that have been programmed into you. And now you're starting to understand that when you connect to this higher self, Endless possibilities are unlocked for you. You really can do magic. You really can affect change in the world. You are this powerful being. Like when you look at the great minds of history, you are not any different from them, because those great minds of history were not just the ego beings of so and so born to these parents. Like on one level, yes, but all of them will talk about how the messages that they received were not just something that they had thought of consciously. Really, it was something that flowed through them as if the voice of God itself was just speaking through them. And I think you're starting to understand that you are someone who's capable of doing this in the same way. There's absolutely nothing holding you back from being any different to Buddha or Christ or any of your favorite artists, right? You have that nature within yourself, and it's the ability to tap into that which will allow you to fulfill your highest purpose in this life. Okay, and I said that was the last card to close out this reading, but you know what? I will draw one card on the level of ego, what your true love is thinking about you right now. Okay, the High Priestess. Okay, so I feel like they understand that you're at this point in your journey where you have tapped into this higher level of knowing. You are the High Priestess right now, and I think they see you as someone who has understood the mystery of love in a way that they never had previously. And so I think in a way they almost defer to your authority, where because you intuitively know that this is true love, and maybe they were kind of wishy-washy on it, but they trust your intuition because they are so in awe of your magical powers that you have expressed, maybe some aspects of telepathy where you literally read their mind, that they are willing to accept the fact that, you know what, maybe they are truly in love with you. Alright, well thank you so much for watching this video. If you're interested in a customized reading, it'll be $25 Canadian for 20 minutes for a pre-recorded video until the end of February. So if you're interested in one of those, please email me. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.